Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. What a massive relief. Spurs just edge out West Ham to survive in the Premier League. There wasn't quite the jeopardy neutrals might have wanted. Spurs scored and held on against a pretty amiable Everton, which meant West Ham's win over Leeds didn't make any difference. We'll have the London Stadium inquest and work out how many of their players will go. Is the Championship any sort of place for a sad Jedi? As for Spurs, 17th 2 seasons running, could De Zerbi pull out all the stops and get them into the top 15 next year? There's the big goodbyes, Pep, Bernardo, Stones, Salah and Robertson. There's the incendiary crime of in-game guards of honour. There's Sunderland qualifying for the Europa League with Bournemouth and Brighton in the Conference League. And then to the England squad, the fury begins about all the omissions, mainly coming from Harry Maguire's family. There's some interesting correspondence on the small chance of a listener getting caught up in the ashes of a panellist's parent. Your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. So then, let's do the relegation picture. West Ham go down on 39 points. Spurs getting 41 after beating Everton 1-0. West Ham beat Leeds 3-0. I didn't watch it live. I woke up. I was woken up at 4 a.m. by Willie Rushden to 67 WhatsApp messages, which made me think, oh no, Spurs are definitely relegated. I don't get that many WhatsApp messages, but fortunately, it's okay for me. West Ham relegated after 14 years in the Premier League. First time in 15 years a team has gone down with 39 points. Barney, you were there at the London Stadium. Did you have a nice time?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually. It was interesting. It was a occasion where there were lots of things going on at the same time. It was actually a good game, and West Ham played well against a team that had just stopped playing. But it was. I thought that the reaction of the stadium was very interesting because the whole story of West Ham's relegation is essentially the hollowing out of the club and the abysmal business of moving to the Olympic Stadium under a really strange deal that seems to have really benefited no one at all. But there was still a kind of joy and defiance in the game and in the fans, and essentially 60,000 people chanting things that you can't repeat on this programme towards the owner of the club. But, you know, look that up yourself. But in the panorama of the entire occasion, it was very interesting. And I thought that I felt there was still some life in the club, paradoxically, despite the fact that the entity kind of squatting on top of it has tried to wring the life out of it. They're going to really struggle now with income, with what kind of team it's going to look like in the Championship, because players will have to leave, obviously. But I expected to be more depressed by the occasion than I was, and I actually kind of quite enjoyed it and thought football is quite good and this club will survive despite whatever has been done to it.
Jacob, Barney mentioned the hollowing out of the club there, and I suppose this is where this we don't need to spend too much talking about the match itself. They played okay, they won, but it feels like this has been coming.
Yeah, I mean, in a contained sense, it's been coming for 4 years. It's something that started. There'll be a lot of people who'll say, be careful what you wish for. You shouldn't have got rid of David Moyes. But despite the trophy win in 2023, if we're being honest, the league form had really started to tail off probably around January 2022. Now, maybe that's partly because he ran out of steam when it comes to dealing with an owner like David Sullivan, but the league form had tailed off under him. He'd lost a bit of momentum, and it's not so much that they got rid of Moyes when they did. It's that subsequent to that, you were placing your trust in Sullivan to get the next decision right, and if they had done that, then maybe it would have been okay. But it's obviously just a series of poor managerial appointments. First Lopetegui, who barely lasted any time at all. Then Potter, less than a year until he's gone. And finally Nuno, who I think has got some pretty good PR for the job that he's done. It's 33 games that he's had to sort it out. And he can point out that it's been a long time since anybody's gone down with 39 points. But that was the league this season. It's been tougher than it ever was before. And he made a lot of avoidable errors that, had he not made those mistakes, like the weird selections against Leeds and Brentford in October, negative substitutions when they were trailing, when they were leading games, that end up proving very costly. They might have ended up staying up. So it's just a long series of errors when it comes to the managerial appointments. But you can also go to Tim Steigton as the technical director appointment in 2023 as well. Fell out with two managers, wasted a lot of money. All these individuals will, they'll have fingers pointed at them, but it all ultimately comes back to David Sullivan and the way he's run the club for the 16 years that he's been in charge. He's, the ultimate person who calls all the shots. Still the largest shareholder. That might be about to change. It's all really down to him and the outdated way that he runs the club. The lack of real infrastructure that's in place. The dysfunction. The just scattergun recruitment, the way that managers are kind of just not fully trusted, and ultimately this it's 10 years since they went to the London Stadium, and it feels all the time that they've been there, despite the brief spurt of success they had under Moyes, that this has been coming. They went to this stadium and kind of just, it feels like they thought, we're in a big stadium now, we're a big club, but they didn't have any real plan to make that actually a reality. They had no vision, and they didn't put any real structures in place to make that a reality. And ultimately, it says it all, that they've been left behind by teams like Bournemouth, Brentford, Palace, even Brighton, who have much smaller stadiums, but have smart, organised people running the show, which West Ham don't have. It comes back to Sullivan, and it comes back to Karen Brady as well, who slunk out of the door last month and wasn't there to face the music yesterday.
Yeah. Jacob, do you imagine... I mean, that stadium, it always appears bad, but occasionally you hear it's okay. Like, what will that be like in the Championship, do you think?
I mean, it can be okay. I mean, there's been an argument of, well, it was fine when they were beating Sevilla in the last 16 of the Europa League. Like, of course it is. This is not a normal thing that happens for West Ham fans. They're going to be up for that kind of game. But when it comes to the bog standard Saturday 3:00 and they're playing badly and there's kind of a lot of disengaged people there, the atmosphere just kind of sucks away, and it's really bad. What is it going to be like next season? I can't imagine that they're going to get close to filling it with 60,000 people. I mean, I think there's a lot of people there who are quite casual day trippers who turn up because it's quite easy to watch Premier League football, and it's not difficult to get tickets there. There's been the issues of away fans being able to get into home sections in a lot of the bigger games. So next season, I really don't see that you're going to get close to the kind of crowds that you anticipate in the Premier League. There have even been the points this season where the actual real attendance has dipped below 40,000. So that sense of apathy, I think, is growing. There's anger, there's apathy, there's a mixture of both. And obviously for the just comes back to what Barney was saying about this deal that doesn't really make sense for anybody. The rent that they pay under the terms of this agreement means that they're going to pay half the rent that they are now. So that's going to cost the London taxpayer around 2.5 million, I think. So yeah, it's just been a disaster for all concerned. The thing is, it's happened before. It's happened to West Ham before. They've gone down. They were relegated in 2011. They were relegated in 2003. They came back, but this feels different because they moved into the stadium and they just got rid of the history, the identity, and for nothing, basically. Yeah,
it does feel weird, isn't it? That if you're in Brent County Council, suddenly your council tax goes up because, or Wandsworth or whatever, just because this weird deal that Boris Johnson did. Who of this squad stay in the Premier League, Wilson, do you reckon?
I mean, Castellanos is quite good, isn't he? I mean, so you would assume he would find another club. I don't think Jacob's probably better equipped to answer that than me, because I've been fortunate enough not to have to watch West Ham much recently.
It is slightly ironic that the first time in what seems like 100 years West Ham sign a decent striker is the season they get relegated. But Castellanos has been good.
They signed 2 strikers, of course, in January. So one of them hasn't scored a goal, Pablo, who has a bit of promise, but an interesting fee was paid for someone with sort of half a season in the Portuguese top flight behind him. Castellanos has been okay. He misses a lot of big chances. I'm not sure if that's going to get him into the Argentina squad for the World Cup. Bowen, he said yesterday that his vision is to get the club back into the Premier League, but the losses that they posted in the last financial year, 104 million, would suggest that there's just no real option for them to keep someone like that. They need to bring in over 100 million in sales this summer. And obviously they've got ways to do that with Fernandes, who they got for 38 million. You'd imagine that they'll make a profit on him. I think he would probably improve any big sides midfield next season. United are really interested in him, Arsenal as well, and PSG. I think Somerville inevitably goes. Diouf, maybe he's shown enough promise. He's pretty ropey defensively at times, but he's young and he's shown some promise. Disasi goes back to Chelsea after his loan, and there'll be some players like Wan-Bissaka to Tebow. They have to get out because they're not the right attitude for the club. Ultimately, relegation means you probably end up selling the players that you want to keep and keeping the players you don't. Will there be a buyer for Max Kilman, for example? Yeah, it's going to be a grim summer because the financial situation is really sums up the way that Sullivan's run the club.
Barney, is, as I said in the intro, is the Championship a place for a dying Jedi? I mean, Nuno has had times of becoming a kind of Ready Brek advert, sort of happy Nuno, but now we're back to what we already originally always saw him as.
Yeah, he definitely didn't seem very happy yesterday, particularly not when my colleague Jacob Steinberg was unfairly badgering him in his press conference, asking him, well, what's going to happen? Are you going to still be here? And he kept saying, that's, why are you asking that question? Which is a very obvious question, and there seems to be a very obvious answer, given that he wouldn't actually answer the question. I mean, he is just a random generic manager. There seems no reason why he should be managing West Ham. He actually, he's been involved with quite a lot of the clubs down at the bottom of the league there. The kiss of death. I don't really understand. He's not the person to fill that sort of moribund project with life and love. There was an astonishing picture of him in the program on the final day of the season, where he just looked. It's the most haunted picture I've ever seen of anyone. Presumably it was the best one they could get. Like, we're going to have to go with this one. But no, it was very sad, and his program notes were so depressing as well. He said, there are many things you could say about our last few games, and none of them are good. And that was his war cry. Pin it to the dressing room wall. He also addressed the fans and said, "I know we have no right to ask anything of you." It was like a kind of Dickensian waif writing to a maiden aunt asking for, keep me out of debtor's prison. I mean, I don't think Nuno's done very well out of the Premier League. I agree with Jacob. I don't think he's done a particularly good job at West Ham there, or was the right man for the job. Can we also say that? Can I emphasise that Karen Brady seems to have got away with one here? I mean, when she left, there were lots of hagiographies about a wonderful football administrator. She had lots of friends in the media, obviously, in a column in The Sun. But she appointed Graham Potter and made great play of appointing Graham Potter and talking about how we found exactly the right cultural fit for this long-term project. He reflects the people of the East End will take to him, this place of innovation and all this kind of stuff, and then sacked him a few months later. And really, the people of the East End did not take to Graham Potter. I think she kind of got away with one. I think Jacob's right. Their entire superstructure was just overtaken by other clubs who almost unfairly appointed competent modern people to these roles, and you were just left unable to compete on that front. It almost seems like cheating.
Yeah, I was in Stockholm when Sweden qualified for the World Cup, and he is so happy not to be West Ham manager. The glee, the joy radiating off him, and I was in the hotel. I got on the way to the game, got in the lift, and there was half a dozen really pissed Sweden fans in the lift. And they started talking to me. They realised I'm English, and they went, "Do you know Graham Potter?" And I was like, "Well, I've been in a couple of press conferences with him." And they went, you've spoken to him? No, I've been in the room when he's spoken, and that was enough to sort of cast me in this sort of elevated light. He's absolutely in the right place now. Yeah, I've never seen a happier manager.
Okay, well, that's enough for West Ham. So, Jacob, good luck in the Championship. We'll speak to you soon at the World Cup, no doubt. Thank you, Jacob. Jacob Steinberg there. So on to Spurs. Barca Jim says, are Everton the biggest killjoys in football? They had one job. So we didn't really have the jeopardy. Wilson, you were there at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
They were fine until they went to injury time. And there was, I can't remember how many, was 9 minutes of injury time, which became about 12 minutes, in the end. And they got panicky then, But there was absolutely no need. I mean, Everton were hopeless. There was, just Tottenham weren't particularly. They were fine, and I've sort of seen them quite a bit this season. And the pattern is familiar. They're quite good for the first hour, and then they run out of steam. And I think partly because of injury problems, they haven't had people to bring off a bench, particularly in forward areas. And that is starting to improve. Obviously, Maddison's back. Conor Marnie was on the bench yesterday. Solanke was on the bench as well.
Solanke on there?
So they had slightly more options yesterday. But basically, once they scored, the thought of that Everton side scoring twice was so implausible. I mean, I'm not sure Everton scored twice in the whole of next season on that kind of showing. But then suddenly gets to injury time and Spurs are panicking. I think it was sort of 3 headers that went not that far wide or over. There's obviously the brilliant save from Kinski makes from Tyreek George. And if that had gone in, there'd still been 3 or 4 minutes to cling on. And maybe the panic would have got to them. But that was entirely to do with Tottenham's panic rather than Everton being any good at all.
Kinski, I mean, we've mentioned it already, Barry, but actually he's been really key to keeping Tottenham in the Premier League, actually. And after what happened to Atleti, kudos to him. I wonder if he's good enough to be their number one, but he's certainly played very well in the last couple of months.
I think on the evidence of what he's shown since De Zerbi came in, he is definitely good enough to be their number one. And to come back from what happened to him at Atleti shows incredible character. He has made some sensational saves. I probably don't know enough about goalkeeping to know whether he's good enough at playing the ball out, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, his teammates clearly hold him in very high regard. Again, this game yesterday, as Barca Jim said, Everton, you had one job, and of course they couldn't do it. I took my Premier League predictions from the start of the season. I was having a look at them this morning to see how wrong they are. They're very wrong indeed. And I suppose the wrongest I was having Everton finish in 19th. And yet I feel if the season had gone on and maybe another 3 weeks, they would have finished 19th. They've really gone out. What at one stage it looked like they might, not too long ago, people were talking about them potentially qualifying for the Champions League. And their season has just ended with a total whimper. I don't think the fans are happy with David Moyes or the style of football they play. So yeah, they had one job yesterday, and obviously they blew it.
Yeah, I suppose they did do that comeback against Man City, which was sort of slightly out of character from their last 2 games. Look, back to Spurs, Barney. De Zerbi has worked, right? He came in, they're paying him a lot of money, and he's come in with positivity, which, I mean, after Igor Tudor, it was hard to not to take it down for Tudor in a positive sense, but he's done what he was, brought in to do.
Yeah, I noticed nobody really talks about Igor Tudor's role in this. Nobody's paid tribute to the work of Igor Tudor in building. I mean, that was probably the stupidest appointment maybe ever. It just was based on. It was stupid because it was
Celtic would like a word, apparently.
Well, yeah, but the issue was that it thought it was intelligent. It was based on, with this guy has this record and he's done, but it didn't really fit. It was a really bad application of the idea of someone having a alleged track record that just didn't actually fit the situation at all. I mean, nobody has a track record that reflects accurately the job of managing Spurs. This is like a unicorn club, isn't it? It's a very strange place with lots of odd things that you have to negotiate. But maybe it's like when you pull back, maybe he created such a feeling of despair and low-hanging fruit that maybe he perversely, it was so easy to improve that. Maybe it was like pulling back an elastic band until it almost snaps and then it can only go forward. So maybe we need to pay tribute to Igor Tudor. But you'd be seriously worried about people involved in appointing him who are still there and will now. But I think De Zerbi's a really good manager, and something about his energy seems to fit the stadium and fit the fans. I like looking at him. I like watching him. I like the way he jumps around in his black T-shirt. I like the fact he looks a bit like a caterpillar. I like his little facial hair. I like the way that he talks about the players. He seems to understand how to motivate them. They will obviously have a clear out. They'll, I'm assuming, get rid of their captain now. There are obviously there's a strange vibe inside the squad. It was nice to see Christian Romero there celebrating wildly with his teammates, which was good. I always knew you could do it, lads. I mean, I have a feeling they could just finish 6th next year because the club has income, does have a base of a good squad now, has a good manager, and this will seem like a strange fever dream. Maybe it's even a good season for Spurs, because what is a good season? It's lots of content, isn't it, and energy, and Spurs have been one of the stories of the season. Maybe this has been good for them in a weird way.
I've been on Google Images of caterpillars. I can't really see any that look that much like Roberto De Zerbi. I mean, you're not...
I'm thinking like a cartoon caterpillar. Like if you had a naughty caterpillar who's, you know...
But he needs some antennae, doesn't he? Do they have antennae?
His hair is a little bit like antennae. He has like the sticky up. He has the hair of like a 2003 boy band.
Aidan does say, as a Spurs fan, I feel absurdly optimistic about next season under Zerbi. Will I never learn? I'd be interested to see, Wilson, what they do with the squad and the players, and as Barney mentioned, you know, Vino Venkesesham and Johan Langer. We talked about West Ham's, you know, the people who run the football club there. Like, they've made some odd decisions this season.
I mean, I think, although he'd gone by then, Tudor was definitely Paratici's man, that Paratici had looked at him. I mean, again, why would you appoint a man on the say-so of somebody who left the club several weeks earlier? But yeah. I mean, De Zerbi said there's 10, 11, 12 players good enough to stay, which sounds like quite a big clear out. It might be, to be fair. There's probably 8 or 9 players he hasn't even met yet because they've just been getting treatment. So I think he's envisaging quite a big overhaul. But the oddity, this is something that Jack Pitt-Brook pointed out, was that it felt exactly the same as the Brighton game, final day last season, when admittedly they lost 4-1. But they finished 17th. There was huge celebrations. The players on the pitch were taking the acclaim of the South Stand. Last season, there was 4 days after they won the Europa League, and there was a sense, it'll all be fine next season. And this time was a similar thing of, it'll all be fine next season. Now, of course, the difference is De Zerbi is there. He's got an achievement under his belt. He'll have some idea of what he wants to do with the squad. Well, change it. I mean, we've seen that. And he's now got the summer to sort that out. Whereas Thomas Frank was coming in as being the bloke, succeeding the bloke who'd actually achieved something. With Postecoglou haven't won the Europa League. So that dynamic maybe is slightly different. But I don't think anybody should be sort of suckered into thinking this is all suddenly fine. It should be fine, and Barney's right. No European football, there's every chance they can finish, say, 6th, maybe even 5th. You know, it's they have a potential to do that. They've got good young players there, people like Archie Gray and Bergvall, Maddison if he's fit. They are good enough to have a decent run. No European football will help, but equally, it could just be another season like this one. There's nothing certain about it.
No, something good about singing "Freed from Desire," having got 41 points and coming 17th. You know, if it's a banger, you'll always dance and sing to it. Anyway, that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll begin with the emotional goodbyes. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So just to confirm everything, Arsenal won the league, into the Champions League. City, United, Aston Villa and Liverpool. Bournemouth and Sunderland go into the Europa League. Palace will do if they win the Conference League on Wednesday. And Brighton are in the Conference League. Let's do the goodbyes. So City 1, Villa 2. This was all about the farewells of Pep, John Stones and Bernardo Silva. They named a stand after Pep, a statue's coming. Barry, actually, of all the emotional goodbyes, it was Pep's dad wiping a tear away that got me slightly going, of, the number of, applauses and guards of honor and people crying. That was the thing that hit me a little bit.
Yeah, it was nice for Pep. I think the one that got me was him quite visibly bawling his eyes out when Bernardo Silva came off. It was a nice occasion at the Etihad. I think the result was a complete, sideshow. It didn't really matter. I was shocked Villa won, to be honest. I would have bet my life on City winning that game, which shows how much I know about anything. But it was an emotional afternoon for everyone at the Etihad, and I know Barney has stuff to say about guards of honor, mid-game guards of honor. I didn't think it was a big deal really. The game was a complete irrelevance, like the one at Sellers Park, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah. We can go to the Guards of Honor if we want, Barney, because...
I mean, the best thing about the Guards of Honor was the discussion about the Guards of Honor. I mean, I liked Wayne Rooney's absolute look of horror, as though someone had shot a budgerigar on the pitch, or eviscerated a dog. He looked absolutely appalled, and that made me think that I should probably be appalled by it as well, because it is. I mean, come on. I mean, there is a lot of fawning in football. There's a lot of. It's very internet. It's very kind of look at this clip of someone crying. It's this parasocial attachment to players, which I think really has something to do with the way the game alienates people. There's this huge well of. I think it's a really interesting subject. There's this huge well of emotion. People love football, and it is, at the same time, it's constantly telling you that you're just a consumer or you're not attached to it. I mean, the whole story of West Ham, the story of Spurs is of taking this addiction to football and to a club and absolutely monetizing it to within an inch of its life. And so there's all this emotion that wants to attach to things. And the habit of, pictures of players that sort of say little clips. It reminds me of tennis. Tennis does this a lot as well. You create this entire emotional construct around players and around optics, around what they look like, and someone brushing away a tear. And it's a really strange phenomenon. And it's a kind of imagined relationship in many ways that has nothing to do with what these people are actually like or what you don't know them.
That's how listeners feel about us, Barney, of course. People are thinking, I'm waiting on your every word, Barney, and thinking if he ever retires,
like the degree of sort of hatred, disdain, and kind of imagined engagement is kind of similar. You're right; it's a very minor version of that. But I don't know, having a guard of honour in the game, it is ridiculous. Like, what's that for? What are the Aston Villa players doing? Guards of honour they have them in cricket as well, and it would often be. Maybe on the last day of a game when it's petering out and there's a genuine sort of legend in the room. I'm pleased I really like Bernardo Silva. He's one of my favourite footballers, and he does really, really speak to the kind of late Pep. Pep loves him. He's the most intelligent footballer. He really is, I think, a really underrated player. My favourite memory of him, and probably of Pep as well, is of being in a press conference. And it was quite a big game, and something had happened, and we had to talk about the VAR decision. And there was a point where Pep just went off into this rant for about 10 minutes about the 3 different images that Bernardo Silva has in his head when he's playing out of possession, how he has 3 different press options. And while he's looking at what to do, Pep can also see those in his head. He can see the images that Bernardo Silva's having, and he says every time Bernardo chooses the right one. And he gave a really specific example, and no one was listening. The entire press corps sort of typing up there. Pep's going on about something, but he'd gone into this reverie about pressing position choices being made in real time. And you saw how much he loves football, how much he loves Bernardo, and their weird networked kind of brains on this. It makes me think that Bernardo's probably going to be a really good coach at some point, because he has made an astonishing career out of he's not a very physical person. It's all in the brain.
I'm completely in the Rooney camp here. So any league, it's a feature of any league, that come at the end of the season, the incentives for different teams will be different. And the league only functions, it only has integrity, if everybody is still at least making some sort of effort to win the game or to get the result that they need out of the game. Bournemouth, thanks to ludicrous regulations, but Bournemouth needed City to win that game to have a chance of getting into the Champions League. If City and Villa are messing about having guards of honour in the middle of a game, and when this happened with John Terry in the Chelsea-Sunderland game years ago, I felt exactly the same. They're by definition, they're not taking the game as serious as they ought to, and I think it's really contemptuous of City and to a lesser extent Villa of teams below them in the table who require them to play that game seriously.
I would argue that City and Villa have no responsibility to try and get Bournemouth into the Champions League. If Bournemouth want to get into the Champions League, that's their own, within their own purview. It shouldn't be.
They have a
Villa or
responsibility to
City.
the league.
No,
No, they do. They have a
no
responsibility to the
obligation
league.
to Bournemouth whatsoever.
They do have an obligation. They have an obligation to play a robust game of football. You can't just do an Austria-West Germany and decide to stop playing. Like, the whole thing collapses as soon as nobody really cares.
One of the
about
problems
what's going
when
on the
leagues
pitch.
began 150 years ago was getting towards the end of the season, teams had nothing to play for, just literally wouldn't turn up for games. So you look at tables from, happily our league seems to have got away with this, but look at tables from the late 19th century, and often you'll have the top 3 or 4 teams will have played 30 games, and then teams are 27, 24, 22 because they couldn't be bothered. This is essentially the same thing, and it's outrageous. You've got to play properly, or the league falls apart.
Not a day goes by when I don't look at league tables from the late 19th century, Wilson. It's nice to know that we share that. Barney, you wrote a piece about Pep, and actually I was sort of pleasantly surprised that Kelly Cates and Alan Shearer at least brought up the charges, because it's sort of deafening the silence in all the tributes to Pep. I think because people just don't feel comfortable talking about it. And, we've talked about this with Spygate. Everyone can talk about a man hiding behind a tree, but people find it hard to talk about the possibility, because I thought the point that you made, that a lot of these titles and these trophies have been very marginal, 1 goal or 1 point. And so we do have to wait until the end of these charges.
Yeah, I mean, it is boring. I know it's boring. No one is interested in people not filing their accounts or not cooperating with the investigation. That sounds really minor. Like, everybody's been late with their submission to HMRC or whatever and had to have a phone call where you wait for ages and then you explain yourself to someone eventually after 40 minutes. But they are really material. Essentially, these are accusations of financial fraud, which obviously City deny. And you're right. I think people sort of think they're historic as well, and they don't relate to things that have happened during Pep Guardiola's time, but they do. And yes, it's really boring, but most other teams, not all of them, were sticking to these rules, whether you like them or not. And success in football is totally attached to expenditure. It just is now. And the fact is, City do have a massive advantage in that there is no financial jeopardy. It doesn't really matter if you spend 100 million on a player, it doesn't work out. Nobody's counting the cost. There's no opportunity cost in that. That's a huge advantage. Now, this sounds like sour grapes. It's not. Two things can be true at the same time. I have no skin in the game. Pep Guardiola is an incredible manager. He's a genius, and he's created beautiful teams that I have loved watching. It's frustrating that these two things have to exist. It's not to say that he wouldn't have done exactly this without whatever, even if the charges are proven, which they haven't been, that this wouldn't have happened anyway. And he's essentially operating under a scheme of patronage, which is really interesting. It's kind of like being a painter in a Renaissance city where you just make your patterns, do your glorious thing, and we will. And that's been really beautiful. And I am interested to see what the statue looks like. Which Pep will it be? Will he be crouching down? Will he be clawing at his own skull? Will he be bursting his trousers? Will he be sitting glassy-eyed in a press conference saying, "I'm so, so happy," and giving death stares to Jamie Jackson? But I love all of these incarnations. I've really enjoyed watching it. But the fact is, it also really grates to have this not mentioned. I liked Alan Shearer's response where he just said, yes, if these are proven, there will have to be an asterisk against this, because he understands. I mean, he's played for the first team to really do this before FFP. His own Premier League title was based on massively gaming the league, this time by a steel magnate in his hometown. So, yeah, we have to talk about it, unfortunately. I think it makes it more fascinating, not less, in its own weird way.
Yeah, and we did actually, Marcus Speller on the radio with me and Barry yesterday brought up a good point about Pep's influence. That in grassroots, and I've noticed this, playing Vets League, people play out from the back now, and they didn't 10 years ago. And it's
Don't you think
mad
that's a bit overstated? Like, I hear
think?
this all the time. Yeah, I mean, we do live in an era where we live in an age, said Arsene Wenger, where everything is totally networked. People do just copy what they see. It was not possible to have this kind of influence previously. Now everyone sees everything. And I've seen this as well in kids' football. People going, like, you shout at people for hoofing it up the pitch, which is a complete 180 from the previous thing of shouting at people for not hoofing it up the pitch.
I love it when people hoof it up the pitch. I love it so much. Just get rid. You know,
I think the cultural influence has been more normalising political interference and bending of rules and a sense of corruption that you just argue about on the internet. That seems more of a cultural influence than a little bit of passing around at the back.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, they both have their place, but you're right. We don't discuss those, on Prince's Park of a Sunday afternoon. That is true. While we're on goodbyes, Wilson, what did you make of Mo Salah and Andy Robertson and those at Anfield?
Yeah, I mean, it is the end of an era. That Liverpool team, the Klopp team that won the league, that won the Champions League, it is now definitively over, and that's been a process that's probably gone for 2-3 years. It began under Klopp, that he made a series of changes, and obviously Klopp goes. Yeah, Salah has clearly been one of the greatest players in the Premier League. It's probably the right time for him to go because he has been nowhere near that level this season. And Robertson as well. That is clearly he's starting to slow down. He's not able to play as regularly, but he has been a brilliant signing. Was it 8 million he cost from
8 million?
Hull?
Yeah, 9 years.
He's arguably been the best left back in the Premier League over that period. So, yeah, 2 great players for Liverpool, and at least they had the dignity to wait till the end of the game to stop and take their. I mean, I know they got substituted and got the applause, but that's how you do it. You don't need everybody to stop and give you a guard of honour.
But well on Brentford, Barry, because Ouattara missed a header right at the end, which would have moved them up to 7th. Keith Andrew's done a brilliant job. You could just see, his head in his hands.
Yeah,
he had such a brilliant season.
His lovely hair in his hands.
Yeah,
he's had a remarkable season. Lots and lots of people predicted Brentford would go down at the start of the season because they lost several key players. They lost their manager. They took a punt on Keith, and Brentford's owner famously made his money out of gambling, and that was a gamble that paid off massively. He's done really well. Delighted for him, obviously, because he's Irish. And it is a bit of a shame they didn't make it into Europe, but I think we very much glossed over Sunderland getting into the Europa League. I think that is an unbelievable achievement by Regis Labrie. And if I could just go back to Andy Robertson, his story, I think, is remarkable. I mean, there was the tweet, I think it was in 2012 when he was an amateur footballer with Queen's Park, and he said, being broke at this age is rubbish. Hashtag need a job. I think he was working in M&S and just, doing, he had a proper job while playing for Queen. Then he went to Hull. Liverpool signed him. He seemed to vanish off the face of the earth for about 3 months. But it was clear that Jurgen Klopp had a team of experts turning him into the Andy Robertson we came to know and love. He seems like just such a lovely, lovely bloke. I'd imagine he'll be a big loss to that dressing room. One of those guys who's clearly just a good lad to have around the place. And the fact that he's really good at football is also helpful, of course. But yeah, back to your original question, brilliant maiden season for Keith Andrews. Be interesting to see how he goes from here. Don't leave Brentford, Keith. Stay there.
Yes, forever. I think you're right. Yes. And rumours that Andy Robertson's agreed to go to Tottenham. So, who knows? It'll be good to have around the place, but I'd have another think, Andy, given what's happened. Let's not gloss over Sunderland getting to the Europa League. Then Wilson, they beat Chelsea 2-1. It is, as Barry said, a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I never thought would happen in my lifetime. That Sunderland have only had one season a year previously, which was the Cup Winners' Cup in 73-4, where they beat Varsash of Budapest and then lost to Sporting. And to be honest, even at half-time yesterday, I didn't really think it was going to happen. I was sort of looking at the table going, hang on, Sunderland in the Europa League? That can't happen. Because it's been odd. This has been the best season by a promoted side since Ipswich in 2000, 2001. Which they finished 5th. Now, Sunderland finished 7th in 2001. They also finished 7th in 2000. And certainly that 99-2000 season felt a lot more impressive than this season, I think, because they started the season so well, because they were scoring hundreds of goals. Kevin Phillips obviously won the European Golden Boot. It does feel slightly as though they've snuck in. But equally, I think they got 4 points fewer this season than they did in 99-2000. But, they've kept going. They were really, really good at Everton last week. And seemingly, I've only seen the highlights, but seemingly physically intimidated Chelsea in the way they physically intimidated Everton. So they need more investment. There's a danger that the strain of Europe makes next season a relegation campaign. But if they put in another 100, 120 million, we could end up with they could end up with the Europa League semi-finals featuring Sunderland, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace, which feels like it should be like a championship playoff from about 15 years ago.
You're right.
Mackham Jonathan May, he has already booked his hotel room in Frankfurt for next season's Europa League final.
That's literally on my to-do list today. I'll probably be covering it anyway, but nice to get it sorted.
I'll bunk up with you, Wilson, if you don't.
You will not.
Okay. Gary says Chelsea no Europe equals league title next season. It'd be interesting. Alonso's a fascinating appointment, Barney, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how he gets on. The problems at Real Madrid are kind of well documented. I like the story of Alonso giving really detailed video briefings to the Madrid team, and the Madrid superstar players doing theatrical snoring noises while this was going on, and him having to sort of stop the briefing and say, I didn't realise I was at a kindergarten. Now, I don't know if he'll find similar problems at Chelsea. I don't know if that's exactly the problem of the Chelsea squad. It's quite a lot of young players, isn't it? I mean, the problem was a lack of experience, maybe. So maybe they're really ready to buy into someone who is really a systems manager. It's clearly very smart. It seems an odd... I can understand why he would take the job. It's a really, for all the kind of idiocy of the way Chelsea have been run, it's an amazing opportunity, and there is real talent there. So maybe it could work. I agree that not having European football would be really good for them. They didn't want to play in that Conference League. And the project is at a real low. It's a good moment to go in there in some ways, although there's a World Cup in the middle of his summer of rebuilding and trying to get his message across. It will be fascinating to see how he goes. He's making Chelsea feel a bit more likeable, I think, which is strange, and I don't know how to process it.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Barry, any strong thoughts on the remaining games or the teams involved in them? Because we've done quite a bit on, Bournemouth qualifying for Europe already. Manchester United, we've talked about a lot this season, who won at Brighton, and the Arsenal Palace game.
I feel under pressure to have really strong thoughts about them now, and I don't, is the honest answer. The Arsenal Palace game, that must have been a weird game to be at. I know loads of Arsenal fans were all, the ones who weren't able to go to the game were all up on the Holloway Road and convening at the stadium afterwards. I was going into TalkSport Towers yesterday. I've never seen so many Arsenal shirts. Every third person seemed to be wearing an Arsenal shirt. And I have noticed some of their fans have moved on from celebration to score settling, which is, a lot of shots fired from the cannons. So, and I presume, I guess they're entitled to do that.
Yeah. Verminex says, Raya and Kepa in outfield shirts and gloves for a trophy lift that happened about an hour after the final whistle. Raya wasn't even in the squad. Should Arsenal be stripped of the title or just have points deducted for next season? And on North London Forever, I was like, is this a total blind spot for me? Have they been singing this for like 50 years? Is this like You'll Never Walk Alone? And then I realised I looked it up. It was only released in 2022, but Yeah, I quite like it as an anthem. I can see how it works for fans. It's got all the things you need. I think it makes you emotional. So that was interesting for me, if no one else. Christian Norgard started, Barry. He was taken
Yes.
off. He was hooked at half time, but nice to see him out there. So Fulham beat Newcastle 2-0, and Burnley and Wolves both get relegated, and they drew 1 apiece. Yes,
Is it
Barney?
worth just noting that Arsenal won the league by 7 points and won their last 5 games, which is interesting.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
given that the entire it was really recently.
Well, after the City
was
game,
all
wasn't
about-
it? After that City defeat, yeah.
The bottling and the it's not done, and the idea that you were going to become an eternal meme of failure, and it's not what happened. It always seemed an odd thing that they were simultaneously being accused of extreme pragmatism and of being bottlers as well, and fragile. So they're either too rigid, formalized and robotic, or they're too brittle. It never quite added up. I feel like you can only be one of those things, but yeah, they won the league by 7 points. It's pretty good.
Do we
I
expect Arsenal to play the same kind of football next season? I mean, I'm quite happy. I don't like watching Arsenal matches. I find them incredibly tedious watch most of the time. I mean, the last game, I think I can remember them being like, not blowing my socks off or anything, but they beat Leeds 3-0 at Elland Road, and it was like, oh, that was good. But apart from that, they're quite a difficult watch for me as someone who doesn't care whether Arsenal win the league or not. I wanted them to bottle it because it would have been funny, and they didn't, so grand. But will they play the same kind of football next season, do you reckon?
Well, I was just going to say, I think there's a legitimate point about the way that the game is broken down. I think the thing that really exacerbated this feeling that they're somehow this sort of nihilistic team was the taking time out of set pieces. That stuff is really infuriating. I think it really affected their own football. I think they took the rhythm out of their own game by doing that. It's very hard to stop and start like that, and that seemed like a real excessive thing. And I think it really exacerbated the feel they're incredibly a boring team or whatever it is. But they still scored a lot of goals and won a lot of games. I don't really buy it. They have some brilliant players. I think probably winning a first league title, I don't see why they would change the way they play when they won the league by 7 points and they're in the Champions League final. They're agonising over the fact that we don't find them free-flowing enough. Like I think that they'll carry on trying to win, and that's how Mikel Arteta sees it. But I don't agree that they've been boring and hard to watch. I think a lot of their games have been tight, but it's given us a very interesting dramatic arc, and maybe they'll relax a bit and the players will feel able to play a bit more in what you would call a kind of improvisational creative way, because they do have some incredible talent in the team.
Yeah,
I think there's 2 related points here. So one is, I wonder if this is the way you have to play in modern football if you want to have a proper run of both the Premier League and the Champions League. And don't forget, Arsenal's budget is only the 4th highest in the Premier League. And what I think they've done is they've gone for depth of squad rather than necessarily having lots of great individuals. So they as an example, maybe rather than signing Madueke and Gyökeres, they could have signed Alexander Isak in last summer. Now that I think would have made them better to watch. It would have meant they scored more goals, assuming Isak had actually come in, but had a pre-season and not got injured. And one of the reasons why they haven't been great to watch is that their centre forward, to be honest, isn't really that good. But Arteta's understanding of just how demanding the Premier League is means that he felt the depth was more important, and you have to say that's been vindicated. It may be that if they bring in an improvement for Gyökeres, they suddenly do look a lot sharper and brighter next season.
What will be interesting is who will compete with them. I know at the start of the season, a lot of people thought Liverpool would run away with it this season. They didn't, so maybe Arsenal won't be as good next year. But a lot of their competitors are in flux, so it'll be interesting to see if they run away with the Premier League by March next year. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll talk about the England squad, and we're all furious about it. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Thomas Tuchel announced his England squad. Well, Harry Maguire announced part of it by saying he was sad, and then Harry Maguire's family all said that they were sad that he wasn't in. The headline's always going to be about the omissions, I guess. Wilson, Foden, Palmer, Gibbs-White, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Maguire, Jared Bowen, Lewis Hall. Some surprising inclusions, I guess. Ivan Toney, Gerald Quansha, Jed Spence. But what do you make of it as a squad?
It's fine. And what I'm encouraged by is that Tuchel hasn't fallen into the trap that even Southgate fell into by the end of just picking the famous blokes. England's big problem for last year is I know they got to the final, but they didn't play well. They were very fortunate to get to the final. Was that everybody was trying to play in that number 10 space. You had Foden coming in off the left. You had Saka coming in off the right. You had Harry Kane dropping deep. You had Declan Rice pushing forward. You had Bellingham, who was actually playing there. You had Cole Palmer coming off the bench doing the same thing. England have got loads of those players who want to end up in that space. And one of the, I know Kane had the back injury, which obviously didn't help, but one of the reasons he was less effective than we'd like him to be at the Euros was he didn't have people running beyond him. Well, Tuchel has picked players who'll run beyond him, and they might not be as glamorous as Foden and Palmer. Foden and Palmer haven't played well this season. If you've decided we can only have 3 or 4 that type of player, well, don't take 6. Maybe make the hard call. Trent Alexander-Arnold is obviously a great footballer. He's quite an unusual right back, and he's not just a plug in and play player. So you either got to say, right, he's our starting right back. Everybody else has to be accommodated around him, or you say, actually, we've got other right backs. Reece James is just as good in his own way, and actually he makes it easy for everybody else. And then there is no place for Alexander-Arnold. Harry Maguire, as Barney said in his column, he's supposed to be this sort of great example of sort of lion-hearted Englishmen. Well, lion-hearted Englishmen don't go sort of, so they don't get their mothers to come bleating on social media. This is exactly the reason why he shouldn't be in the squad, because he's not going to be first choice. You don't want him, as Barney said, you don't want him moping around the tennis courts between games. So he's not so good you can accommodate that. So leave him out.
It's all paddle these days, though, isn't it? No one's playing
That's a good point.
anymore.
It was incredibly rude to Dan Burn, who, for example, is the player he's referring to as. Dan Burn played in essentially the same thing. Tuchel doesn't want to play this. Maguire is always the slowest person on the pitch, and he steps backwards. He drags the rest of the defensive line back with him. I know football isn't a game of sprinting, but that's really important. That space in midfield is really important. And he obviously doesn't want to do that. So you can only really choose one of Maguire or Dan Burn, and Dan Burn played in the qualifiers, so pick him. It was a really interesting case study in the unreliable narrator. The level of delusion in that it wasn't just a narrow call that went the wrong way. It was a travesty not to pick Harry Maguire in his own mind. Was really surprising. Can I say on Wilson's point about Harry Kane? I've got this dream of England. This won't happen, but because there's not time and no one wants to do it. But the problem has been Harry Kane not playing. He seems to always be the furthest forward player in England teams at tournaments. So you get to see him trying to sprint beyond the last defender, which is obviously a terrible idea. And he hasn't played like that for Bayern. And I would love to play him as the number 10 with Ollie Watkins ahead of him, so that you have a totally different dynamic. Kane effectively plays a number 10 for Bayern because the wide players do run on ahead and they're comfortable coming inside. Watkins is really good form. He's really quick. He can score. He scored in a tournament semi-final. He'll be feeling good. Kane is England's best number 10. I don't think Jude Bellingham will play there, but is he a number 10? I don't know. I've never really seen him play well as a number 10. I don't really know what his
Kane does
position
normally.
is.
Kane does play as a 9 who drops deep, doesn't he? Like, he doesn't play as a 10.
Well, he'll be in the same space as whoever is playing at number 10 when that happens. Somehow it seems to work okay with Musiala.
Yeah.
Musiala runs beyond him. We'll have the same sort of logjam, and it'll be Kane trying to sprint beyond the centre-backs, and everyone will complain about him being exhausted and injured, but it's just not his game. And I'd just like to see a tournament where that doesn't happen, and there's someone quick there. That would be really nice, but there's not time to do this. No one wants to do it. But
that's why there's the argument for picking Morgan Rogers ahead of Bellingham, right? Because Morgan Rogers more naturally would make that run beyond him.
Yeah,
and
he makes really
well
good
in the
runs.
qualifiers.
Tuchel might pick Rodgers, I think. I mean, he did in the qualifiers. I think he might do it. Steve says, can we get Barry's thoughts on Harry Kane once again going missing in a big game? He scored a hat-trick in the German Cup final against Stuttgart. Barry, you are obviously furious about the squad. Are you fear it? Do you fear it?
I think it's a really good squad. If I was to foam at the mouth about any exclusions or omissions, I think Adam Wharton's a terrific football player. I'd have him in. And Yeah, apart from that, really, I think it's a really good squad. I'm worried. I'm officially worried, Max.
Okay, well, it's all right. I'm sure there'll be a night on our 6 weeks together where you don't have to be worried anymore, and I can stare wistfully into the distance at another depressing but heroic defeat. Well done to Hull, who beat Middlesbrough in the Premier League. We've got an EFL pod tomorrow. We'll go big on that. Of course, you were there, Wilson. Did you have a nice time?
I had a nice time. It was a terrible game and it was far too hot. But I was glad it didn't go to extra time. And I'm glad that it didn't go to the extra time of potential Hull court cases saying that Middlesbrough didn't deserve to be there. But I was certainly glad it was over, put it that way.
Any questions for the FL pod or anything else? Football Weekly at theguardian.com. Barry, you on the minute by minute for the Scottish Cup final, Celtic beating Dunfermline?
Yeah, another sign we're not allowed nice things. Everyone, I think, apart from Celtic fans, wanted Dunfermline to win in the same way that they wanted Hearts to win the title. Neil Lennon, obviously manager of Dunfermline from the Championship, coming up against his old pal and mentor Martin O'Neill. And Dunfermline, I think the occasion got to them. They didn't turn up till the second half, and by then it was too late. They were 2-0 down at half-time. Celtic scored 3 really nice goals. Kelechi Iheanacho's goal is absolutely terrific. Just this little soft shoe shuffle, jinking past 3 different players before sticking the ball in the net. I didn't think he had it in his locker, but he did. I know they're only Dunfermline players, but you can only jink past what's in front of you. And look, Celtic have had this season of total turmoil and still come out at the end of it winning the double. I don't know what that says about Scottish Fitba, but we need to get Ewan back on.
A couple of emails to finish. Dr. Matthew Clark writes, "Hello, gents. Thank you for your excellent football podcast and all of the niche knowledge I glean and recycle at the pub with mates. I happen to run a vasectomy service in Bristol, and I get 20 minutes in an entirely unique position to speak with each patient when all is laid bare. In such circumstances, I find the conversation surprisingly candid. We often veer towards football. As an Arsenal fan, I confess this may happen more recently. You will be pleased to hear that in these moments I recommend to anyone listening how brilliant your podcast is, and oddly enough they appear to listen to me. If you ever want a Q&A on vasectomy on your show, please do give me a shout. Keep up the great work. Dr. Matthew Clark, BSc, BMBS, MRCS, MRCGP, SSM, VAS, which may be vasectomy at the end of it. I'm not sure. Yes, Barney?
Why is vasectomy such a theme of the pod? I feel like people are trying to stop the pod from reproducing.
Well, it happened organically that somebody wrote in to say that they were listening to us while they had a vasectomy, and then others also chimed in to say that also happened to them. It was the same time as lots of people were having car crashes while listening, and their car would be a write-off, and Football Weekly would continue to play.
Are these people who had not planned to have a vasectomy when they started listening to the pod, but by the end of it, they're in the clinic under the knife?
As this is, humanity cannot continue. And this is all we can do. This is an email from Paul.
I think getting a vasectomy is a very arrogant procedure. You know, it's like, I'm having so much sex that I need to go and get a procedure done to stop me conceiving more children. You know, just do it the natural way, like I do. Abstinence. It works.
I mean, but I would say if you did have 2 young children, you might think, even if you just tripped over by accident, you'd be like, I don't want the chances. We finished with an email from Paul with the subject matter, I may have eaten Wilson's mum. I'm writing perhaps a bit late, but I feel that I must, given the frequency of deja vu I've been experiencing from the pod. A few weeks ago, I travelled from Michigan, where I live, to England to walk the UK coast-to-coast trail. I flew into Manchester and swiftly boarded a train up to St Bees. Leaving Manchester Piccadilly, only minutes into my journey, I saw out of my right-sided window a view of the Etihad Stadium, and of course my mind wound back to a recent controversy surrounding Mr. Barney Ronay. I toggled my way back to the conversation of the episode, which I had listened to on the plane that morning, included that his claims to be incorrect, though there were rear-facing seats in the car I was in. This was on which side the Etihad was on when you were on the train, Barney, but we don't have time for you to defend yourself. Days passed.
Yeah, it's on the right side. It's on the right-hand side.
It's on the right as you head north, absolutely categorically 100%.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Days
If I
passed.
sit
Left
left,
if you're heading south.
no, but the thing is, I
Okay.
may have been facing backwards in my seat. Like, that's the point.
You can't get angry with the audience. Days passed and I completed my walk in the north, returned to Manchester for my return. That evening, I walked through central Manchester listening to the latest episode where Jonathan Wilson recounted the tales of him spreading his parents' ashes. He told of a bench on the Haweswater in the Lake District where he scattered his
No,
mother's...
it's on Ullswater. It's Ullswater.
Oh dear. Well, that means Paul definitely hasn't. He carries on to say... where he scattered his mother's ashes, only for them to later blow back onto a picnicking family. I was shocked again to be experiencing a pod story in some bend of time. It so happens that I'd walked the entire length of Haweswater days before listening to this, and had stopped on a bench to eat an orange and a can of tuna. What a disgusting
Well, also, it
meal.
was in 2019, so...
Okay. Well,
unless
give
you'd
Paul
lingered.
a chance. Yeah. Perhaps in the flecks of dormant dust that had blown onto my lunch, I too consumed a portion of Wilson's mother. It's unclear to me, but I can't help feel that I may have a prophetic and prescient relationship to the pod, and that all anecdotes past and future have stirred their way into my consciousness, and I neither remember nor forget them. All aside, I want to thank you for your work you do on the pod and your individual pieces. One of these days, I'll heed the appeal to defend press freedom. Yes, donate. All the best, Paul. I'm getting back married in a few months. Oh, here we go. If Barry could offer some well wishes to my fiancée Sutton and me, it would make our day. So just to confirm, Barry, Paul did not sit on a bench near where you scattered your mother's ashes. It wasn't Haweswater, it was Ullswater. So Paul is okay. So we can discount this, which is a shame, but I've read the email now. Barry, it's Paul and Sutton. They're getting married.
Well, I wish Paul and Sutton the very best of luck. I'm still overwhelmed by the subject of his email. I may have eaten Wilson's mum. I really don't know what to say beyond that.
Well,
but
that's okay.
Yeah, very good luck to Paul and Sutton.
Yeah, good luck to both of you. And that will do for today. Thanks, everybody.